Take two, yes. Frank, that was wonderful, and don't ever feel like you're not good up here. You are.
Amen.
One of the most fun things about hosting up here is watching Tracy in the back when I do something differently. She's like, change the slide, change that, don't do that, no, wrong section. It's very funny. So Raymont has been a lifelong learner with a passion for self-development, personal transformation, transmutation, and transfiguration. He lives his bliss as a teacher, American Sign Language interpreter, and performing artist, visual artist, author, martial artist, mentor, father, grandfather, and much, much more. Of course, he's a licensed CSL minister, and he's the senior minister here at the Center for Spiritual Living, Greater Baltimore. Welcome, Reverend.
So how are we today?
We are wonderful.
Okay. Because that's acceptable for now. So each week, in preparation for the message, for the newsletter that Sue sends out and posted, go on social media, come up with the title, but there's also the little blurb, the little summary of what I'm going to talk about that, also gets sent. And usually I do my best to stick with the general idea. So today I would like us to go ahead and read, wrong direction. Sorry, Tracy. So for those who can read this, who are close enough to see it, so what we're talking about is who's the master. So for those who weren't here last week, we talked about spiritual leadership, all right? Leadership from a spiritual perspective. And we're continuing in that vein because the theme of the month is spiritually motivated, moral leadership. And today we're talking about who's the master, this idea of self-mastery. So, you ready? And begin. The business culture of today's world is about
mastering the economy, mastering one's job, and mastering some skill or talent
like gymnastics, basketball, ballet,
or cello.
Even many martial arts.
Focus on skills, whereas our focus for today takes us down an avenue few people truly venture.
Pause. Get that. Our focus for today takes us down an avenue that very few people truly venture down. So you ready to venture down that road? Okay, let's go. Lao Tzu said,
Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. And Leonardo da Vinci said, one can have no smaller or greater mastery than mastery of oneself. If self-mastery is so important, why do we all take up this venture? And if we are not mastering ourselves, then what is or what has?
Ooh, so check this out. Whether we are practicing any of these specific things or not, in order to purposefully, specifically master them, do we understand that we are already masters of our lives in one way, shape, or form? We're already, because in order to master any of these or anything else, what has to happen? What do you do in order to master a set skill, etc.? Practice. Now, and other than one person in here, everyone here is older than 20, right? So we have been practicing being these people for a while now, right? Now, what is the average amount of time that is said that it takes to master something? 10,000 hours. Like that's the general gist of 10,000 hours. We've put in well over 10,000 hours in becoming who we are. So the idea is then, are we reaping the benefits that we desire to reap? Are we showing up with the skill set that we desire to have? If you're intending to master the cello, how do you know if you have mastered it yet or not? There's an outcome. There's some result that you have as your rubric to say, well, I don't know why I'm holding the cello like this. It's obviously, it's not. It's her cello and that's, okay. There's some outcome that we measure as the thing that says, if I'm studying gymnastics and I can't do a backflip, then I haven't mastered it clearly. If I'm intending to be a master chef and I throw some stuff in the pot, and then I give it to our 2 new visitors today, and they're like, oh, thanks, I'm good, I'm vegan. Then I haven't mastered whatever it is to be a chef, clearly. Have we mastered the things in our lives? Are they showing up in a way where we can stand proudly and say that I am living a gold medal life? And if not gold, then silver. And if not silver, then bronze. There is no fourth. Right? So we have to get really real with ourselves and ask, what is the quality of the life that I'm living? How am I showing up? You know, there's at least one person in here who is a fellow thespian, who understands that when you are crafting the stage, when you are crafting the character, part of, and a small part of what goes into creating a play or becoming a character is the memorization of lines. That's a tiny part of. Anybody can go up there and say, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? For a rose by any other. Like anybody can recite lines. But it's how do you create how the person moves? When you create how they glance at. Like all of the, hitting your mark. Habitually having a repeatable action knowing that when you are supposed to do, you need to be in front of the door to ring the doorbell. Because they're going to, you can't ring the doorbell from over here. They're going to ding ding sound effects. I'm psychic. That's what, you have to be able to repeatable action. Do what you need to do every night. We already practice repeatable actions. Because every single one of us in here is a habitual creature. We have habits. How many folks have, in the midst of your busyness, coffee cup in hand, papers in hand, opening the car door, coffee pot, coffee cup goes on the roof, papers go in, oh, forgot to do something, come back in, get in the car, start the car, drive off, look for your coffee cup and realize, oh, shoot. And then look and see it rolling off the... Right? We've done something similar. Or we put our keys somewhere, and it's not where we normally put our keys, but we put our keys somewhere. We've broken habits, so then when we go back to find the keys aren't where we thought they were. And then we're like, oh my goodness, where are my keys? Where are my glasses? My glasses are, oh, they're still on my head. Where are my keys? Oh, they're still in my pocket. Like, we're already practicing being us. Are we reaping the benefits that we desire to reap? Are we showing up to the degree in our lives that we want to show up as, show up in? You know, I was having a conversation with Jim the other day, and as much as he has tried to get me to like this nonsense, like I can't do it. It's Star Wars. Ugh. It's a joke. I love it. I want to make sure our new folks understand. That's called comedy. So, this scene, anybody, well, please tell me you're familiar with this, like you know what's going on. Part of the idea is training to be a Jedi. And one of the main things that Yoda was trying to impart to Luke was this idea of, always with you, this other thing. Always with you what can't be done. Always with you, the limitations. Always with you. When are you going to stop and listen to what I'm telling you and focus on this one thing? Possibility, the force, what the force can do. There is either do or don't do. There is no space in between where we call try. Someone once said that try is the word we use to give ourselves permission to fail. It's like you're either doing it or you're not doing it. There's no try. And if what we're going to say is, I'm trying to play the guitar. No, you're not. You're playing the guitar. Well, I'm trying to get better. Are you practicing? Yes. Then you're not trying to get better. You are getting better because you're practicing it. So there's no trying. You're either doing or you're not doing. Because when we start to really look at our lives, there's somewhere in there where there are things that we don't like. There are situations we don't like. There are people we don't like. And it's getting deeper than just the surface level of practicing. Because one of the things that Yoda, reminded Luke of is this crude matter is not what we are. We are luminous beings. And so to become a Jedi, you have to be able to see beyond flesh and blood. To be in what this thing is called New Thought, religious science, learning science of mind and spirit, we have to get beyond seeing just individual beings with individual names and individual personalities and understand that back of all that, there's only one. It's what Frank said, there's only one. There's only God showing up as a trillion other people, things, and things, and things, and ever on. So one of the things we are encouraged to practice and master are things like compassion, forgiveness, love without expectation or condition. I think I mentioned it last week that there was this woman that Oprah talked to on Super Soul Sunday. Did I mention it last week? Well, anyhow, I'm going to mention it again then. Repeatable action. So Oprah's having this conversation with this woman, and she's a professional something or other. I don't know if she was a therapist or I don't know what she is. And she was telling Oprah that parents should love their children less. You hear what I said? She said parents should love their children less. And then I listened to more what she was talking about, and she said, because when you love your children too much, you give them everything they ask for, you do this for them, I was like, ding, 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 that's not love. That's codependency. That's not love. That's conditionalized, that's not love. So no, don't love your children less, love them more, but know what love is. Like that's the conversation that So that's where we are, is how do we practice that more? How many parents are in the room? Okay. So how do we love our children without condition? Meaning, I love you even when your room's not clean. Oops, struck a nerve. I love you even when. I love you in spite of. Because this thing that you are doing has nothing to do with. Now, how do we love ourselves in that same way? How do we say, I love me even when I didn't get that job? I love me even when I failed at this. I love me even when I left the coffee on the top of the car. And that was a $50 coffee mug thing and I bought it because they said it was going to keep the coffee hot for a month and a half. And I believed them, and it actually did, because I left it anyhow. It's gone now. But I love myself even though. I love myself even with the extra weight. I love myself even with the extra gray hair. I love myself even when the hair's gone away. I love myself even when my body doesn't show up as the most healthy thing that I want, because I used to be able to bend over and touch my toes and then come back and not have that. But I love myself in the midst of. I love myself so much that that's what's showing up everywhere I go. That I may not have a gold medal when it comes to this, or this, but I guarantee you when it comes to loving myself so much, I got a gold medal, I got an Oscar, I got a Grammy, I got a Golden Globe, I got a People's Choice, I got those when it comes to loving myself. I have mastered the art of being able to love me no matter what. Because the thing is, There are situations in the world today that are not the most optimal for health and well-being globally. Would we agree to that? Yes. That there are political leaders who are not demonstrating the most life-affirming way to lead a global, whether it's economy or global, whatever, that there are people who don't know. And so they're leading from what they know. There are teachers in schools teaching from what they know, which is not the most loving, life-affirming way to teach children. But they're teaching the way they know how. That there are people out there who, once they decide that they want your shirt, they're going to tell you, give it to me, and when you don't, they're willing to shoot you for it. That there are people who are willing to, because I want you dead, I'm willing to shoot through a crowd of people to get you, and it doesn't matter if they get hit. Would we agree that there is a consciousness that is surrounding certain places, certain people, certain whatever, that is not the most life-affirming, most godly, sacred, and holy demonstration of this thing that we call Source, Spirit, God?
But I would only agree that there is much more of the source that is loving.
Oh, that's all there is. But
predominant.
the thing is, we don't know how to live from that space. So until we learn to recognize, for example, right here and right now, listen, which radio station do you hear right now? In this area, the Lutherville area, there's at least 15 radio stations that you would have access to in this area. Which ones are you able to hear right now? None. Nancy's like, none. Because we don't have a radio hooked up, turned on, and tuned to any of those 15 radio stations. But that which is playing right now. 101.7.5 FM radio, it's playing right now. God, source, spirit, love, one mind, the thing itself is always playing. When we talk about, sidebar, we talk about this little light of mine, I'm going to let it No, it is not a little light. The light of God, the light of spirit is not a little light. That still small voice. The only reason it seems still and small is because you're yapping too much. Stop with the ego. Stop with the fear. Stop with the lacking limitation. And when you turn that down, then the sound of creation becomes a booming clarion call of yes.
Amen.
Possibility and potential. So the thing is, if we want to start shifting what's going on out there, we have to start shifting what's going on right here. And every time we practice the art of, you voted for them? Why did you vote? Who are you? Where did you like those people? You hang out with them? Oh, you don't eat meat? What do you? Every time we practice the art of judging and condemnation and blaming, every time we practice the art of that, we get more skilled at it. And what we know about this practice, I'm sure you heard the concept of the 100th monkey, right? Anybody in here who has never heard of that concept before? Okay, so the idea of the 100th monkey is apparently, in whether it's, whatever, there's medicine in it. So there was an island here and there's an island here, and scientists noticed that monkeys over here were, learning how to eat fruit with utensils, right? And they're like, because they couldn't get into it, and they're like, what are you laughing at me for? Jim's laughing at me. Leave me alone. So they're like, they're trying to crack into this thing, and they're like, and so one of them came over and was like, why are you using your hands? Here's a knife and a fork, whatever, right? So eventually they use sticks and stones. Don't laugh at me. They use sticks and stones, and they eventually get into whatever the fruit is, and they're like, and it's delicious. So they start teaching, like the other monkeys come around, because it started off with 2. And then 3, and then 4, and then, Cornelius and Zira and like a couple others. Only a couple people got that. Then a couple others come in there, and then boom. And by the time it got to the 100th monkey over here, is like, oh, this is delicious. They noticed that the monkeys on the other island, way over there, boom, immediately picked up the skill. No one had taught them this thing. But it somehow, because there's one mind, the idea is there's only one mind, and what happens in one mind, one place, is present in all. Like, that's the gist of it. Of course, I changed it and made it raise, but that's the gist of it. So we talk about mass consciousness and how mass consciousness plays into. But we don't talk enough about how we get to change what mass consciousness is. Like, we don't talk about how do we shift mass consciousness so mass consciousness is no longer a consciousness of lack, limitation, racism, sexism, homophobia, etc. Like, how do we start infecting it so that the darkness of the need to even shoot another human being never enters into a person's mind? Like, where is that the response? Oh, you said something about my sister. I need to shoot you for that. Where in your mind is that the equivalent response? So our task is, every time we practice shifting and moving and transforming ourselves, it changes the energy of the planet. Anybody know the name Nadia Comaneci?
Yes.
What is she known for?
Gymnastics.
Gymnastics.
1976,
Oh,
gymnastics
wow, you
Olympic
went way
champion.
back. Thank you, Doug.
First
Ooh.
number 10, I think.
So, when there is a gymnast who masters a skill, have we noticed that the gymnasts over time are doing things now that the ones back then didn't even think of doing? That the young lady now who has surpassed every gymnast. How is that possible? Because it's been done before and she's upgrading. It's time for a spiritual upgrade that starts with ourselves. There's a great book called Radical Dharma by Buddhist priest. Her name is Reverend Angel Kyodo Williams. And I want to share there's something that she says in here. Without inner change, there can be no outer change. Without collective change, no change matters. You got that? Without inner change, there can be no outer. And without collective change, no change matters. So it comes to, what are we doing on the inside? What are we shifting? What are we transforming within ourselves? She goes on later to say, which one do I want to go with? Then there is her perspective as a Buddhist priest that she says, rather than renounce the world of politics or political engagement and activism, she has chosen instead to interweave them into her path as a bodhisattva, where she says, you make an actual vow to hear the cries of the world, to step into the experience of awakening to the suffering of the world, and the desire to bring an end to that suffering becomes what you do. She has chosen to be an active bodhisattva, to master the art of living compassion, to move in the world as compassion itself. Why don't we become religious science bodhisattvas, or bodhisattvas of the science of mind? New thought bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas who are brave enough to say, there are people who suffer. There are people who are being sex trafficked today. There are trans women of color today being targeted. There are children today still separated from their parents. There are still children who don't have enough food to eat in the richest nation in the world, and yet they go hungry every night. There are still people who are ready and willing to throw a rope in a tree and put that rope around my neck simply because of the color of my skin. Clearly, there is a consciousness that exists within the minds of people right now. And our job is to step beyond these four walls, roof and ceiling, with this philosophy. And I'm not saying you... Hello, my name is Ray, and I'd like to introduce you to the science of mind. Have you ever heard of it? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when people see you, do they see light? When you are standing in line in the grocery store or pumping gas, getting a prescription filled, setting up a table, interpreting beside someone who's talking 1,000 words a minute. Like when people see you, what do they see? What do they feel? The nerd in me also, thank you for mentioning Dr. Strange. Once again, the idea of, are we willing to practice whatever it is we need to practice? And the reason I love these movies and the comic books is because this is a demonstration of the very path that we are on. For those who don't know, Stephen Strange, great neurosurgeon, great surgeon, arrogant as all get out, thought he was the cat's meow. Car accident ruins his gifts and plummets him into, without my hands, without my craft, I am nothing. Someone tells him, but there's a way for you to be healed, wink, wink. Go to India, okay, find the ancient one, and his path back to was not to get his hands back the way he thought. His healing was a different path, a different way of being in the world. When do we step into this new way of being in the world? When do we step into what it really means to be healed? Back in 1985, there was a movie. Anybody familiar with The Last Dragon? Oh, I love that movie. So one of the repeated lines in there, who's the master? And everybody responded, Shonuff. He was the shogun of Harlem. Who's the master? Shonuff. Who's the master? Shonuff low down round this town. Like that was the, if you haven't seen the movie, you gotta see it. It's cult classic. But the idea was eventually Shonuff and Leroy Green, also known as Bruce Leroy, had a confrontation finally. And at one point, Leroy goes back to his master and says, Master, why have you sent me to find a master that does not exist? And his master says, dude, I sent you to a master that does not exist. I just gave you a fortune cookie written by a master that doesn't exist. And the fortune cookie had no fortune in it. There is only one place that you have not looked. And it is there and only there that you will find the master you seek. And it took Leroy a little bit of time, but then he gets into the confrontation with Shonuff at the end, and Shonuff asks him the question, who's the master? At which point Leroy understood and responded, I am. I am. And that's when the glow, because that's what the movie was about, the glow lit up. When do we realize there is no external master? There is no one outside of us. There is nothing outside of us. That which God is, that which is the very power and presence of all it is right here, right now where we are. In the remake of The Karate Kid, which actually wasn't karate, it was Kung Fu. It took me a long time to let that go.
Therapy.
It took me a long time to let that one go. But in the thing, Jaden, Chandre, throws his jacket on the ground. His mom's like, boy, put the jacket on. So Mr. Han notices, oh, so he throws the jacket on the ground. So he made him, very similar to Pat Morita, Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off, making the mundane task of, put the jacket on the floor, pick it up, hang it up, put it on, take it off, put it down. Pick it up, hang it up, put it on, take it up. Repeat it and repeat it and repeat it till it became second nature. But the idea was, because he told him, Kung Fu, which actually translates as diligent or disciplined work. Kung Fu lives in everything we do. It lives in how we put on a jacket and how we take off a jacket. It lives in how we treat people. Everything is kung fu, meaning everything is deliberate, intentional action that we are practicing. And so if we want there to be a world that works for all, if we want there to be universal peace and health care and coverage and food and clothing and housing for all, then when we get to principle number 5 in the Declaration of Principles, the We Believes, and it says, we believe that that all of this thing that we call discord will end. The ultimate goal of life is a complete freedom from all discord. How much discord am I still living with? Because I cannot expect her life or his life or her life or their lives or anyone's lives to change and somehow be the cornerstone that says, there, if I'm not doing it here. Namaste, that which is divine in me walks the walk. That which is divine in me sets the tone. That which is divine in me sets the vibration. That which is divine in me sets the intention. That which is divine in me thinks it, speaks it, feels it, does it, so that there is a world that works for all. That's what we are being invited to in this thing called self-mastery. So simply sit with that for the day. And if you're coming to the workshop this afternoon, we're going to dive a little deeper into that whole idea of what it means. But just sit with the idea. Is it supposed to be fun? Not always. Is it challenging? I just had a conversation with a fellow colleague, fellow minister, who basically said, this is one of the most difficult things that anyone ever does. This whole journey of self-discovery, self-awakening, and then walking from that awareness. It's one of the most difficult things we could ever do, but it's also one of the most necessary if we truly want to be happy and healthy and well and see the world healthy and well and happy. Let's pray. Simply anchoring into this moment with this breath. Feeling the inhalation and the exhalation and recognizing that the body is doing this thing called respiration without our active participation. That we can modulate the length of a breath. That we can modulate the depth of a breath. But that we cannot stop the breath. That ultimately that which God is breathing itself as us. And so spirit is ever going to breathe itself in one form or another. The universe breathes. And so surrendering into this eternal breath, I speak what I know. Love is the only power that exists. Love, called by many names. Love, spirit. Love, God. Love, the eternal. Love, the infinite. Love, joy and magnificence. Love, potential. Love, possibility. Love, hope. Anchoring into this, knowing that that which love is must be incarnating itself in, through, and as all that I am. Love being all there is, God being all there is, this one mind, the thing itself, this infinite power and presence that is not a person, that is a presence, it is a power, it is love, it is joy, it is magic. That which it is showing up right here and right now, in, through, and as all that I am. And what is true for me must be true for everyone in this room, because that which it is all there is. A circle whose circumference is nowhere, whose center is everywhere. The very center of the universe is right where each and every person in this room resides. The mind of God, their mind. The love of God, their love. The body of God, their body. That which God is as the capital S self showing up, incarnating itself right here and right now as these individual selves. In gratitude, I know that That which God is mastering itself as Raymont is mastering itself, as this congregation is mastering itself, as this country is mastering itself, as each political leader is mastering itself, as the teachers, the parents, the social workers is mastering itself, as every man, woman, and child on the face of this planet. Right now, there is a new quickening of spirit, a quickening of love, a quickening of possibility and potentiality and peace on earth, goodwill to all. That quickening right now is vibrating in, through, and as the very soil that we walk on. It is in the air that we breathe. It is in the rain that wettens our faces. It is in the music that we dance to. It is in and through and as all that is. And so in gratitude, I place these words into the law that eternally and infinitely says yes. The law that receives these words. The law that now manifests and demonstrates from spirit into form. And in gratitude, knowing that it is already complete in the mind of God, therefore it is already showing up, manifesting, and concretizing in form. I joyfully receive a world that works for all. I joyfully participate in a world that works for all. I dance with excitement in this new world that works for all. In love and appreciation, I anchor this into the law, and together as a beloved community who knows the truth, we declare this by saying, and so it is. Amen.
Amen.